In professional sports, the pressure can be so intense that competition turns into outright conflict in just a split second. Today, we're going to break down one of cricket's most infamous on field explosions, a moment where the words hit harder than any ball and a line was crossed that changed everything.
Yeah, that is the raw, uncensored threat that brought a high-stakes international cricket match to a dead stop. It came from one of the greatest bowlers of all time, Glenn McGrath, his face just filled with rage, pointing a finger right at West Indian batsman Ramnaresh Sarwan.
It's a pretty shocking moment, right? So, how on earth did we get here? How does the gentleman's game end with a threat of actual physical violence? Well, to really get the explosion, you have to understand the incredible pressure that was building up on that field. See, this wasn't some random outburst. Nope, this was like a volcano erupting. It had been simmering for a while, just fueled by pure frustration and the unbelievable tension of a truly historic game. Okay, so picture this. It's Antigua, May 2003. It's the fourth test match between the West Indies and this powerhouse Australian team. For days, these two sides have been battling it out under that hot Caribbean sun. But now, here we are on the final day, and something that seemed absolutely impossible was, well, it was starting to feel possible. 418, that was the number, the target facing the West Indies. To win, they had to pull off the highest successful run chase in the entire history of Test cricket. I mean, it was a massive, almost ridiculous target. But they were actually doing it. The heroes of that chase, Ramnaresh Sarwan and Shivnarine Chanderpaul. Both of them scored these incredible centuries, just defying one of the best bowling attacks on the planet and inching their team closer and closer to making history. You can just imagine the pressure on the Australian bowlers was getting absolutely insane. And this quote right here from Omari Banks, he was a rookie who ended up hitting the winning runs, it just perfectly captures the feeling of that moment. They weren't just winning a game, they were doing something legendary. And as the West Indies got closer, you could just feel the Australian team's composure starting to crack. And it's right here, in this pressure cooker, that the game's competitive spirit just frayed and completely snapped. What happened next would become a textbook example of what happens when on-field taunts, what cricketers call sledging, goes way, way too far. So here's how it all went down. McGrath, he's totally frustrated he can't get Sarwan out, and he asked him, what does Brian Lara's dick taste like? Without even skipping a beat, Sarwan fires back, I don't know, ask your wife. And that's when the volcano erupted. McGrath just completely lost it, because Sarwan's comeback, which might seem like a standard retort, had accidentally hit a deeply, deeply sensitive nerve. And this is the one piece of information that changes absolutely everything. Sarwan had no clue. But for Glenn McGrath, any mention of his wife at that time was tied to this incredibly painful, private battle she was fighting for her life. For McGrath, this wasn't just a sledge. It felt like a violation. His wife, Jane, was his whole world. And the enormous stress of her illness was something he was carrying with him every single day. So Sarwan's words, even though he had no idea, they landed like a dagger to an open wound. Now, the story could have just ended there, right? Just another ugly moment on the field. But what happened next is actually what makes this whole thing so important. Because the story shifts from pure rage to, believe it or not, mutual understanding. This was that moment of just raw, unfiltered fury, the absolute boiling point of the whole conflict. But just look at the contrast here. As soon as the heat of the moment was gone, McGrath was just consumed by regret. He admitted he went too far, that he was so disappointed in himself. It was a complete and immediate change of heart. And honestly, what's really remarkable is how the two players handled it after the fact. There were no dramatic press conferences, no official complaints filed. As soon as the game was over, someone went straight to McGrath, he hugged him, and he apologized. And McGrath accepted it and apologized for his own reaction. They dealt with a really ugly situation like grown-ups. So why are we still talking about this one incident from all the way back in 2003? Well, it's because it became this powerful, real-world lesson about the unwritten rules of sports and that dangerous art of sledging. For anyone who might not know, sledging is a massive part of cricket culture. It's basically a form of psychological warfare, all designed to distract or intimidate your opponent. But as this whole thing showed, there is a very, very fine line between a clever mind game and a deeply personal attack.
This little chart kind of breaks it down. You've got banter on one side, which is meant to unsettle a player's focus, maybe with a bit of wit. But abuse? That's totally different. It's crude, it's brutal, and its only goal is to demean someone. It crosses into personal stuff, family, race, private struggles, and that violates this core idea of sportsmanship, an unwritten code they call the spirit of cricket.
I mean, when you're out there on a field like this, under all that pressure to perform for your country, it's pretty easy to see how that line gets blurred. Players are told to be aggressive, to have that mongrel in them, as they say in Australia. But the risk is that the aggressive character you're playing on the field can start to become who you actually are.
And that's really the lasting legacy of this story. It became a cautionary tale, one that's been passed down in the cricket world ever since. It proved that you just never know what personal burdens your opponent is carrying off the field. What you think is just a routine sledge could actually be a trigger for something much deeper and way more painful.
So this whole incident leaves us with a pretty fundamental question, and not just for cricket, but really for all sports. When you're in that desperate chase for victory, where do you draw the line between psychological tactics and personal abuse? And maybe more importantly, whose job is it to make sure that line is never, ever crossed again?